Hi guys, can you all hear me? Excellent. Well, thanks guys. Thank you all for coming along tonight. I know it's always a bit of a weird time to try and organise these sort of things, but yeah, thank you for all attending. We've got, I'm really going to be covering the Metrel Delta today, which is what we're going to be sort of mainly covering. And I'll guess also questions and anything you may have regarding test and tag, I'll put on at the end. On the page, you'll see I've sort of put a couple of links as well. There's a Google Drive link to some documents we have, some help guides, cheat sheets, that sort of stuff. There's also a link to the new Metrel software, which is always worth downloading, particularly if you're going to Windows 10. That you definitely need to get the new version of the software. The older versions may not be compatible. And then there's also a couple of links as well for some email addresses if you ever want to get in contact with myself, Andrew, or Matt, the other sales guy. All of that is in the show notes down there at the bottom. And we've also got the chat window, which you guys have found. If you have anything you want to ask me, just put in questions, and I'll definitely try and answer them as we go. Interrupt me at any time, and I can answer anything. Otherwise, I'll take any questions at the end as well that you may have. And look, feel free to chat as well. I found a lot of people find good information from other people, so it's always worthwhile knowing about. So the Delta is pretty much what I'm going to be covering today. This is what one, particularly the simple test, is what we've got configured when we supply them. So let me just bring up my notes. So I wish I could show the screen very well, but I couldn't get anything from Metrel. The basics are the main menu, which you'd all see. Simple test is the majority of testing that people will mostly do. We preload it with a whole lot of additional tests, but the default ones that you'll get are Class 1, Class 2, and leads. We also put in some additional ones, including Class 1 and Class 2 leakage. There's RCD leakage, portable and 30 milliamp RCD, and some surge protected ones as well. It's funny, one of the good things about this Delta is you can have these simple tests. You can't modify them though, so you can add simple tests, but you can't delete it. And that's what we get quite often asked. They've put in, someone's added something onto it by mistake, you can't easily delete it. You can wipe the unit, but that will take out all the simple tests as well. The simple tests are pretty self-explanatory. Anyone who's been doing testing for a while will know Class 1 and Class 2 is earth and insulation. Leads is extension leads and your little IEC connections, which sort of have that sort of a connection. Point to the right camera. And then you've got your leakage, and that's the run test. Now, with this unit, to do a leakage or a run test, you always have to have the mains power connected. If you don't, you'll get a message that says wrong voltage. That's the same across all the units that are battery powered. They all require mains power to operate. Going down, we have a few additional ones, and I'm sorry guys if you haven't got this on your unit, they can change it. Sorry Jeff, can't see anything. Can the rest of you guys see me okay? Okay, I'll keep going. If you can't, okay. There we go. I'm not sure what's happening there, Jeff. I'll go back a step. The basics of the Delta, and this is the way I always describe it, is you've got your up and down buttons to navigate through your menus. Test is pretty much your enter function. So that's how you enter start results, enter information. Mem is mainly memory, and that's sometimes used to save results into the tester. I call that the tab button. It's a left and right arrow. It can vary depending on what you want to call it. I call it the tab button. And then you've got the escape and also the power button. They're the 6 buttons. and you've also got that on the software as well if anyone's using the Metrel Android software. You've got your 3 connections along the top. For most testing, you only really use the black connection. That's the earth point. You've also got the neutral and the active. No one really uses those, to be honest. We don't really teach it in our training courses. Black is what you always want to use. With the kit, you'll always get, I think, a green, a brown, and a black lead. Those are generic, so you can actually plug them into any connection you like. Even if you have the green one, as long as you plug it into the black socket, it'll work fine. I quite often suggest to guys and girls to keep those aside. Use the black one in your everyday, but keep the other ones spare and safe. If you ever break it, you lose it, you can always use the brown or the green lead. Just make sure you always plug it into the black. On the top, you've got 2 IEC connections. That's for your mains power. That charges the unit, and that also draws power when you're doing the leakage testing and also when you're doing the RCD testing. And then you've got the IEC socket, and so that is for testing extension leads and IEC leads. Apart from that, the other things people need to know about are the fuses. So there's 2 little ceramic fuses that go in the back there. They're both 16 amp fuses. If you can't do a leakage test for whatever reason, it could be that you've blown a fuse. All you do is unscrew the cover, pop the fuse in, and the leakage testing and the RCD testing will work. The other part is there's a battery cover there, and that's where your 6 rechargeable batteries are located. It happens very rarely, but sometimes if the unit does freeze, just pop the batteries out. Take the cover off, pop the batteries out, put them back in, and it will start up again. It happens very rarely, but we do get the occasional call about it, and it's sometimes if there's been a bit of a surge through to the unit. If it stops, just take the batteries out, put it back in, and you'll never have an issue. And then you've got your 240 plug at the front. That's pretty much the unit. Connections. That's your USB port. That is for downloading to the computer mainly. And then that's actually a serial connection. So that's actually for, it's used for programming the machine, but it's also used if you've got one of the basic Zebra printers. You can actually use that for the serial cable through to the machine. I'm using one of the Bluetooth models here. It looks identical to the original Delta. The only major difference is it has the Bluetooth module for the communication. So that's the unit. The basic home menu is the simple test, and that's where I'd say 99% of the work you'll be doing goes through. That's those simple test codes. The shortcut menu we get often asked about. This is actually, Metrel have preloaded a whole lot of preset codes. I think there's about 70 codes, and they're all listed in the full instruction manual which you get on the CD with the unit. We rarely use them in Australia because most of them are designed for overseas testing. So they're preset for a lot of European standards, European trip times and those sort of things. Rarely do we ever use them in Australia. There's a couple that we can use, and I've put them on the cheat sheet. It's really class 1 leakage and class 2 leakage. The rest of them don't really relate to Australia. You can play around with it if you like, but we've found using the simple test codes is by far the easiest, and they're all preset for the Australian standard. Single test is actually quite a useful little feature. It allows you to go through and actually do a single test on a particular item. So say someone comes along to you with a lead and they just go, this wiring looks a bit different. You can do an earth bond test only. You can do just an insulation test. You can also do some leakage testing. The one that's quite useful is actually polarity. So if someone's got a lead that you think the wires may be crossed or looks a bit sus, you can just do the polarity test and make sure the wires are all good. Saying that, sometimes just doing the actual full IEC lead or lead test can be just as useful, but it is there if you want. You've also got touch leakage and differential leakage. The one that people quite often will need to use is RCD, which is towards the bottom of the actual menu. Going into that, this is actually where you can do a fixed or a portable RCD test. So it's a bit hard to see on my machine here, but if you go into RCD under the single test, you can actually press the up and down buttons and switch through RCD, and that's actually for your fixed wall RCDs. And then you've got PRCD, and that's your portables, and they're your little orange safety switch boxes, which a lot of tradies use. They're pretty common around the place. So to do an actual test, you just set PRCD, choose whether it's a 10 or a 30 milliamp. You can then also time the multiplier is how many tests it will do, and then your 0 and your 180 test. It's the sort of thing, it's a bit hard to demonstrate over a webinar, but that's probably the one area that people don't realize is there, and that's doing your testing of RCDs. The unit has the built-in isolation transformer, and that is to stop the trip current if you're doing a portable RCD test from taking out your main switchboard. Essentially what it does is if you're doing a fixed RCD or RCD, it sends the trip current through the mains power into your power point, and then will cut out your switchboard. If you're doing PRCD, it's using the mains or the IC lead connection into your portable RCD, stops the trip current going down here and taking out everyone's computers in the office, which is never a popular thing to do. But RCD testing, a lot of people don't ever come across it. It's mainly used in building sites and those sort of things, but the unit is very good at doing that. It makes it really easy. The other two options are power and voltage, and that's just really testing the output at the wall. It's not something we really teach about. Most people don't need to worry about it. They just happen to test and tag, but the option is there, particularly useful for electricians and that sort of stuff. Going back to the main menu, the fourth option down is help, and that's just some really basic little description guides of how to do a class 1, a class 2 test, those sort of things. Little descriptions, some of them don't necessarily make a lot of sense if you don't understand it, but it's useful to have there. The last option is setup, which you really don't need to go into all that often, but it's really useful to know it's there. Some of the basic functions are memory, and then you get options like recall results. So that's actually to recall previous tests you may have recorded into the appliance. Delete results, so you can actually delete individual tests. And then you've got clear all memory, and that wipes the unit completely. That one is actually quite useful if you're testing regularly and download into the computer. You can download your results, clear memory. It wipes just the data of the tests. It doesn't wipe anything like date and time or anything like that. It puts it back to 0, and then you can start testing again, particularly useful if you go into a new site, so you're not getting duplicative information, that sort of stuff. You've also got printer, and that's useful if you want to reprint a tag if you've got a testing system. And then RFID we don't really use in Australia. That's if you've got one of their RFID ones, which they've never released here at all. Language, self-explanatory. You can change the default language of the unit if you need. English is pretty most popular. Communications is a useful one to know. By default, it sets it for RS232, which is actually the USB, serial port. So it's actually using that little connection there. If you're going to communicate to the computer, you need to make sure it's set for USB. It's quite a common thing we get called up that people can't download the results. It's set for serial, and the unit won't talk to the computer at all. So if you leave it on USB, you're fine. The only reason you'd want to change it is if you're using one of the basic printers and using the serial cable, you switch between the two. But it's always worth checking if you're having any download issues, make sure that's set for USB. The rest of the info for the printer is about the different types of printers available. I can go into that if people want to know about it, but pretty much if you purchased a print kit, it's already configured up for what you may need. LED is just changing the brightness of the screen, so it makes it a bit easier to read. Lead compensation, not something you'd ever really need to worry about. It nulls the earth, but that's something that usually when you get calibrated the machine, that's all adjusted for you anyway. The one, scrolling down a little bit, test speed setup is probably one of the most common questions we get. If you've ever done training with us, or you're doing the simple tests, the machine will go through and test itself automatically. So it'll go visual, and then it automatically goes on to earth bond installation all its way through and passes. By default, it's set for standard. And what it does, it stops after every step. So it will do your visual, you've got to prompt it, and then go on to do earth bond, prompt it, and then do visual and all the way through. You set for fast, it goes through automatically. We try to set them up by default when it comes through as fast, But if you ever find you're doing your testing or someone's played with a unit, make sure it's set for fast, and that speeds things up. The reason you might want to actually have it on standard is you might want to change a parameter of a test. So if you come across something that you want to do a leakage test, but it takes 20 seconds for the machine to power on fully, what you can actually do is switch it to standard. It'll stop and it will say about to perform a leakage test, and you can actually adjust how long you want it to go for. So you can actually say make a 30-second run test or something like that. It's useful in that respect. Most of the time people are happy with what we preset on there because it's just easier to do. Quickly, you want 3 seconds, test, 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 done. But setting it to standard is useful if you need to change anything while you're doing a test. Particularly things like a lot of power tools, grinders, those sort of things can take a little while to kick in to get to full power. And it may not actually test it properly if it's only doing it for 3 seconds as opposed to 30 that it might need to start up. But setting it for fast and then pressing test beeps, that will do pretty much most of what people do. But that's probably one of the most common questions we actually get called up for is they've done the training, the machine went through quickly, and now their machine is stopping at every point. So that's the test speed setup. Date and time, probably rarely have to change that one unless you're in a southern state that has daylight savings. And then you got user data, and this is something people don't always see because it's quite down the bottom. This is actually where you go through and you can actually set up to 5 users so that your results, if you're recording results, will actually save into the machine under your user data, like your license number. So you can have up to 5 users there, and then essentially to edit, it actually gives you tab, which is this one, as the edit button, and actually go through and press the up and down buttons to scroll through letters and numbers. So it's a little bit fiddly, and this is how you enter data if you're not using an Android device. And you just essentially scroll through letters and then numbers, and then when you're happy, you press the test button, and then you go on to your next number. So it's quite slow, but you only have to do it once. So I usually recommend putting in your initials and your license number because it's only got a maximum of 12 characters. So if you've got a really short name, you're lucky and you can just put your name and number. Most of the time I just say put your initials and your license number and then save, which in this case is mem, and it'll appear as a user. All you then do is press the test button again, and it's now recording all the results under there. Instrument data really just tells you when it was calibrated, the firmware version, that sort of stuff. Not really relevant to most people, but it is there if you want it. And then you got init or initialize settings. This will completely wipe the unit. It resets it back to default. It doesn't actually delete data as in test results, but it will wipe your user details, the time and the date, and also those simple test codes. So it's not something I recommend doing unless you really have to. It's there if you need it, and sound turns on and off the beeps. Some people will find it's annoying, other people not so worried about it. So that's the main menu. Is any questions so far? No worries. Yep. So to do that, you go to setup. So George's question was actually that the PAT is new and it's set to standard. How do I change it to fast? So to do that, you go to setup. You scroll down the options to test speed setup, and then make sure it's set for fast. And then it will beep, and then that should be all good. No worries. Yep. RCDs. So yeah, probably what would have happened is when you trip the switchboard, it was set for for RCD. So if you want to grab your Delta and you go to single test, and then if you press enter and then scroll down to RCD, so it's the out that is actually the major one. If it's set for RCD, what it's going to do is going to send the trip current through the mains power straight down, and that will take out your switchboard and computers or anything connected to that particular circuit. If you set it for PRCD, the isolation transformer kicks in, and essentially that's blocked, so no trip current will go down the mains line. It'll only be testing through the ISC socket. If you the other one, I mean, pretty much you're going to be setting it for 30 milliamp. That's the most common. Very rarely will you come across 10 milliamps. 30. The multiplier, what you can actually do. Oops. So with multiplier, you've actually got three options. You've got a half. Okay, so regarding the trip, there's actually an option multiplier. Leave that for times 1. What you actually want to do then is the mod 0, 180. So that's the 0 degree phase trip. You reset the switch, and then it will do 180 as well. So it will do it 2 tests. You've just got to reset it each time, and the machine will automatically trip when it's available. So just set it for that. So PRCD, 30 milliamp, multiplier of 1, and mod 0, 180. That's the easiest. That's the pretty much the default settings for these things. But if you have any questions, definitely give me a call. We can always walk you through it over the phone. Myself or Matt have had a lot of experience with that sort of thing. So we can always, if you want, grab one and we can walk you through it and make sure you don't trip anything out. But this unit's got the isolation transformer. So if it all is set correctly, you shouldn't take out the main switchboard. Jeff's email, a message. A problem downloading data even though it's set for USB. Okay. I'll cover that in a minute. That can be one of many, many, many things. It could be mainly the biggest issues are the COM ports, so that you actually need to set on the software the COM port that it's connecting to. I'll show you that in a minute. It can be a lot of things. I wish it was a simple thing that I could easily make up a little document, but a lot of times it requires just a bit of working through over the phone to try and identify where the problem lies. It can be also Windows 10 has caused a lot of problems with the database component being old or not compatible, but I can walk through that, the basic sort of setup. And Jeff, if you're still having issues, give me a call, probably tomorrow, and I can walk you through it over the phone and get it all going. It should be pretty straightforward, but Windows 10 seems to be the biggest problem. That's a basic sort of view of the tester. It's very straightforward. Most people do things. How do you mean, Nigel? As in, it does not change date in machine. Do you mean like as in the warning message is still coming up? Okay, so yeah, the calibration date. That's something that whoever did the calibration would normally adjust, whether it was myself or a third-party company. We change that. So when the machine's calibrated and we do all of that sort of servicing, that date's normally reset for you, so then it will appear in 12 months. If it's not, and you've just had it recently calibrated, give me a call and I can sort that out for you. It just requires something in the tester to be changed, and we can definitely adjust that. The message will appear after 12 months anyway, so you can actually look in the settings. Down the bottom there's that data, instrument data. It'll actually tell you the date that it was calibrated, and the message will start appearing. It's 11 months from that date, so I'll give you a warning to say, yep, calibration's due, and then you normally send it in to us, or any sort of calibration technician can do that sort of thing. Okay, so I'll go on. Is any other questions? That's the basics of the machine. It's a very straightforward machine, and most people will only really use the simple test menu, and mainly the setup if there's any problems. But apart from that, If you go to simple test and perform all your testing, you're fine. The things I always tell people to do, make sure you always use the black socket, and that's your return lead. That gets connected to your appliance or your mesh or whatever you might be testing, and then the other end goes into the front of the tester. Are you, sorry, does it, Datafui? Are you meaning a timeout error within Patlink? Is that what you're referring to? Okay, no worries. Well, what I'll do, I'll show you a bit of a Patlink guide. Let me just. Okay, can you all see Patlink open on my screen now? It should appear pretty soon. Okay. Let me just try and make it fit in a little bit better. Okay, so it doesn't fit particularly well on the screen, but it'll give you a basic idea. So this is your basic Patlink software. The most recent version is 1.9.25. I would recommend just downloading it and installing it, particularly if you have Windows 10. If you've got anything from I think it's 0.18 and newer, that is compatible with Windows 10. Anything before that isn't. So it doesn't hurt to download it off the website. I've included the link in the notes sort of below the video to download and update to. It's always worth doing. You never know what they're going to fix in the background. So the basics of downloading some information, you essentially go to Instrument and then Get Results. And it brings up this reading measurements screen. For the basic setup, I always untick the Auto Detect All box and I choose the DeltaPat from the list. It does have DeltaGT and DeltaGT Pro. DeltaPat is the one you want to actually be using. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't lose any records. It should just update. The only time you would is the basics of Patlink. Patlink's the program that you see in your operate. SQL or SQL is actually the database component, and that's actually what's probably been causing a few problems for people in the last sort of 12 months with Windows 10, is that the SQL is actually where the database is stored. If that SQL isn't installed correctly or it's stopped running or anything like that, Patlink won't open, or if you open Patlink, all your results will disappear. If you just update and if you're still running Windows 7 and you update, you shouldn't lose any information. There is a backup utility which I can show you how to do. It's included by Metrel to back up your data. The only downside is that when you restore the database back in, it overrides the database and replace it with that. So I only recommend to do it if you've had a complete data loss. It's not particularly good for if you do some data, download it, back it up, and then download more data. When you restore, you'll lose everything and it'll go back to that particular point in time. Okay, so I'll show you how to do a report. The system, Patlink actually does have some built-in reports to do. The Excel is just it's literally a data dump. It's just reporting and then you've got to do all the work. There are some preset reports in Patlink. 1.3. Which version are you referring to? Is that the Android software that you're referring to, or the PC software? I'll keep on going. The reading measurement screen, which you can see. Can you see the reading measurement screen on my computer? Okay, yeah. Sorry, what I'm talking about, this one is the PC software. 1.3, I think 2.250 is the most recent. You can always go into the Google Play Store and check, and it will show you it will just update automatically. They haven't really made a huge amount of changes. I know there's a new change, just a bit of an interface coming, but they actually haven't changed too much recently. And particularly if the software is working fine for you, then you shouldn't need to worry about it too much. With the reading measurements, the basics that I always set up for people is instrument name is always DeltaPAT. I always untick the auto detect box, and the COM port you manually choose. Now this is usually where people where things get stuck. COM1 is always the serial port on your computer, so it's never COM1. It's usually always COM3, COM4, COM5, something like that. There's a few little tweaks that you need to do. People find sometimes when they plug the Delta in, it doesn't install the drivers correctly. So you actually need to manually install the drivers for the COM port through Device Manager. And that's something I can definitely help you with, depending on if you come across that issue. I can talk over the phone or even remote in and get it going for you. In a perfect world, it'll automatically install and it will assign it a COM port number. You then choose the baud rate, and it needs to be 115/200. That's for USB speed. If you set the baud rate too low, by default it's on 9600. That's too slow for it. That's a serial connection speed. Always make it 115/200. Let me see if I can I might try and hook it up and see how we go. If everything is correct there, you literally just press the start button and it will tick through, and it should go opening serial port, reading instrument data, storing instrument data, and then it will download everything. Let me see whether I can get it to work. Okay, there. So essentially it will tick the boxes. If it all goes through fine, it'll come up with an option, do you want to save duplicates? If you say yes, what it will do, it'll download all the data that's currently in your machine. If you say no, it'll only download what hasn't been downloaded previously, if that makes sense. So most of the time people are just happy to press yes, and then it will start reading, and it will start ticking through, and it will go through. Okay, so we've got 108 on our demo tester at the moment. That'll all start to download in a perfect world. If you're having issues with communication, sometimes it's just as easy to give me a call. I'm here from 8:30 till 5, and I can just walk it over the phone. There's usually a few little tricks to get it going. Once it's working, it usually will keep on going each time. Once it's done and it's finished everything, you click close, and we'll actually then add a new option called download. So it just starts sequentially, download 1, download 2, download 3, and it appears over here on the left hand side. There's one already here. This is some dummy data that I've already done for a customer. You can actually then, it's a tree hierarchy, so that's how I usually describe it. You can expand it out. So you've got sites. If you right click, you actually get a few different options. So you actually get a rename option, which is really useful, particularly if you start to get a few download names. You click on rename, and you can actually call it whatever you want. So I'm going to call this company B. I found for people, if you rename your data and you're organized with the data, it makes life a lot easier. So if you rename it something relevant, so a particular company name, this might be a particular site, you can rename it as well. So you right click and go to rename, and then you can go through and actually make the information relevant. And then if I click on these little, I don't know, I'll call it the little world icon, this actually then starts to give you information about the tests that you've done. So the test speed, and then particularly here, the test status, will tell you what the results are. Most people don't really worry about it. If it passes, and that's all they're happy with. To do a report, you've got two options. You can actually you right click on company name. You can do export data, and then this gives you a few options to export raw data. So you can just export to an Excel file, a CSV file, a tab delimitator file. That's if you want to import it or merge it into a different program, or if you want to do some fancy work and you can make your own reports look good. Most of the time people just do that if they just want a raw dump of data. What the Metrel has got some preset ones. If you right click and actually go down to create report, you can actually use some of the preset reports that Metrel have made. So you can actually choose with the basic version of the software. You've got Metrel Pat Pro and Full Detailed Pro. and it actually shows you how many appliances you're reporting on. So you can actually just do a report on a particular site. So if you've got multiple sites, you could do that. If you want to do the whole report, you can. It'll just tell you how many appliances you're actually going to do in the report. So you can choose the first or the third one. These additional ones are if you've got the Pro Plus software, which most people don't really need with the Delta. It's more for some of Metrel's other units that have a lot more data recording, and you can do more detailed reports there. But look, it really doesn't matter too much for most people. The full detailed Pro is usually the one I recommend. So all you do to make a nice looking report is you go to full detailed Pro and then click OK. You then get options of customer number, inspection number, and order number. You can put information there if you want. This is what will appear on your report. Most people don't really worry about it too much unless the customer's requesting it. You then click OK. On yours, it might bring up a message saying that it's taking a little while to create a report. You just click OK. And then it will actually create a report on your screen. Let me just see whether... I'm not sure if that's appearing. But it'll actually then show you a full report. And it will actually give you all the details. Can you guys see that report? Or is it not appearing? When you say alert boxes, do you mean the message? Okay, thanks guys. I'll let me see if I can get that to appear. Window capture. Okay, so that maybe will appear now. Let me know if it comes up. Okay, yeah, there we go. There we go. Yes, it does show my mouse. Unfortunately, it's capturing whatever I show on the screen. So that's a full detailed report, and that's what you can supply to customers. You can actually go through and change things like the logo there, or what you want to appear. I've just got mine preset with what Metrel says, but you can actually go through. So you could pop your own company logo on there, or a phone number, or whatever you want to appear, and then that customer information number will appear here. That's the one we put in previously. So that's how it appears on your screen, and it shows you how many pages you've got and those sort of things. What you can then do, you can actually click on File, Save, and then Adobe PDF for a file. And that will allow you to save it to a PDF to your computer, and then you can send that through to your customer, keep a soft copy on the server, print it out, see how you go. That's a basic report, and it shows you all the information that most people need. There is the simple report, which I'll see if I can create one for you. Okay, parameter 1, parameter, no, that's preset by Metrel. It's because this software is actually used by a number of different models, so it's not just for the Delta. Metrel sell a huge range of different testers that actually use this software. So the parameter 1, they've made that very generic. I'm asking them in the future releases to try and customize it a little bit more, but it's a bit of a case of what we want compared to what the software has to do globally. So I think they've left it very much as generic as possible, which is great in other models, but it doesn't give you a lot of detail on there. Okay, so this is a simple report. Let me just see whether this will appear. How do I get that to appear? Sorry guys, can't seem to get that one to come up. Hang on, window capture. Sorry, just let me get this. There we go. Okay, so this is what a simple test report looks like. Um, it really depends on what your customers want or what you need to record. Some people are just happy to write it down and just something basic, just want a report of it all. But that's a simple report of just showing you different appliance details, those sort of things. And you can scroll through the different images. So that's a very basic view of the Patlink software. I have heard they're supposedly making a different version of the Patlink to make it a little more user friendly and those sort of things. It's been in development for about 12 months now, and haven't heard any word yet on if they're going to release it. It's looks a little bit nicer, looks a little bit easier to use and a bit more user friendly, but it does the same sort of job with the downloads and those sort of things. But like I said, it's been talked about for a while. I haven't actually seen much in the way of results for it yet. So at the moment, Patlink is still what people need to use. So let me. Sorry guys, let me just get the right camera up. There we go. Okay, so that's a very basic guide on Patlink. Georgia, where to get the software? So it's actually in the. If you look at the notes on the page, there's one called Patlink Pro download link. I've made a direct link to the software from the Metrel website, and you can actually just download it from there. It's around 500 meg, so if you've got a good connection, it shouldn't take too long, and you can install that. The one trick I'll give for that one is it actually comes through as a zip file. I found it makes life a lot easier if you copy the contents of that zip file into a folder on your desktop and install from there. I found it a more stable install. Sometimes installing it from a zip file can cause problems. If you can see that link, let me know. Otherwise, I can always make a direct link to it. I can pop it in the chat notes if you like. Is there any plans to allow uploading to the Delta? Sorry, David. I'll let me see if I can increase the resolution. Hang on a second. It does go blurry a little bit. It's sort of a bit depending on our internet connection. Let me just make sure I've got this set as high as it will go. Okay, yeah, I've got it set as high as it will go. Hopefully it might come in and out a little bit. Could also be something's happening on the server. Plans to upload to the Delta? No, not at this stage. It'd be nice, but the Delta is considered one of their more basic models. The Sigma Pat, which was their bigger version, the blue one you may have seen with a full keyboard, that could allow uploading and downloading, but no, I don't think so. They've really gone towards using the Android software, so using a tablet, and some of you may have seen the Metrel software. That's what they're moving towards in terms of not so much uploading to the tester, but using the tablet to scan the code or recall results and allow you to test again. That's something, the software is really useful, particularly if you're using it for data reporting. Even if you're having to press the up and down buttons through your Delta, if you can then use the Android tablet or Android phone and record data that way, it makes life a lot easier. I can go into that if you want. Some of you may have seen it. It is only Android. At this stage, there's no plans to do iPhone, iPad, and the actual reason is the hardware from Apple is very tightly controlled, so you can't actually allow that sort of communication back and forward. Android is a lot more open, a lot more. You can do a lot more with it than Apple. So at this stage, it's only Android. If it did iOS, it'd be fantastic, but there's pretty much no chance that's going to happen, and it's actually to do with Apple. Metrel want to do it, they just can't work out a way to get through Apple's very strict controls. So the Android is the way people are going, and that's what they're going towards in terms of data recording. Calibration price. The Delta itself, you're looking at about $220 plus GST, and takes around 5 working days. Depending from here, we do it in our Melbourne office here, and Sean in the Perth office does them there as well for anyone over on the West Coast. But yeah, you're looking at $220 plus GST. The calibration. Yeah, so I'm just looking at my notes. Calibration takes 5 days. I've popped in the Metrel guides and documents folder. I've popped a link to a Google Drive, and I've just dropped some information. There's a couple of instruction sheets and that sort of stuff. There's also the service request form. So if you do want to get your stuff, the unit calibrated, we do also all the other Metrel, all the Wavecom, the Seaward, we do everything for the calibrations here. You can definitely send it in to us and we can do it. If it comes in with the paperwork, it makes it a lot easier for me to work out who it came from. We do seem to get a lot of testers that come in with no paperwork, no people's names. It's really hard to know who to contact to tell them it's ready. So that's all in that Google Drive folder. Okay, so tested a new item and it says, do you want to update the test? Okay, yeah, so that's for the PatLink software, or the APAT. I think it'd be APAT with that sort of a question. That's if you just want to, that's essentially allowing you to do the retesting, and it actually keeps a history on the tablet. With the Delta itself, each time you do a new test, it's a new record. So if you go back in 6 months and test again, it's a new record that it's been done. With the APAT software, which is the more advanced one from Metrel, it then actually keeps a history on the tablet of all your tests that you've done. To give you a bit of I won't go into the PatLink and the APAT too much. I can do another session on that if people want to know a bit more about it. Metrel have made 2 different programs. They've made one called PatLink, which I'll show you like that. This is the basic software. So this essentially replicates what the Delta does. Instead of having to type it using the up and down buttons of the tester, you can actually do it straight onto the tablet. It's very, very basic, very easy to use, and that one you're looking at about $107, and we just ordered that directly from Metrel based on your serial number. There's also a more advanced one we call it APAT, and it's a lot more comprehensive. So it can do a lot more data reporting. I don't know if I can show you a project. Hang on. So it's actually got sort of a tree hierarchy, similar to your PatLink software. So it's a little bit easier to add different appliances to different locations, that sort of thing. You can actually then go through and add your own logo to go on the printer. That one you're looking at about $275, including GST, and it's pretty good software. It's a little bit weird to use to start with, but once you get your head around how it operates, you can add appliances, you can export to the PC. It's actually really quite good. It makes the testing process a lot easier. My iPad is locked and won't download to the tablet after a test. Is that when you've completed the test and it's trying to communicate to the tester, Tony? What I might do with APAT and PatLink, hang on, yes, it is connected via Bluetooth and does a test. Okay, that could be, you've got with the tester 2 options. You can go to save to Android device or save to tablet. That's something I might actually get you, if you could email me, I'll give you a call tomorrow and I can work through that. That could just be the way the actual APAT's set up. It's got a few little configuration things you need to work through in terms of how the data is recorded. If you want to email me, my email is in the show notes. I can then walk through it. Is it worth upgrading for PatLink to APAT? Yes and no. Yes, if you're looking at going with the more advanced printer. Okay, no worries. No worries, Tony. It is worth it, depending on the testing you're going to be doing. If you're just happy to do basic tests, just control here, save to the tester, and then the tester goes across, PatLink is fine. It's quite easy, quite straightforward to use. APAT's a lot more sophisticated in its own databases, so you can actually set different databases in the software for different clients. So if you're going to be dealing with multiple people, multiple companies, that sort of thing, APAT's great because it can show you can have a database for one company and then another one. You're not trying to store multiple companies all onto the same machine. So it is a worthwhile upgrade if you don't mind that extra cost, um, but it really depends on your needs. If you're just doing basic testing and reporting, Patlink's fine. If you're doing it for multiple customers and multiple clients and you want better database management, iPad is definitely the way to go. You can get a free trial. Metrel make it available on the Play Store to have a look at it, but it will sort of lock you out after a few tests and it will want you to sort of pay for the upgrade. But it can give you an idea of how it works and you can see whether it's worth the time and effort. Um, the software display is gone now. Andrew, we've all moved on. Okay. Um, that's basic Patlink. I can definitely, if people are interested, let me know, and I can definitely do a more advanced session on APAT if you want to get the handle of it all. It's quite detailed, so I won't sort of bore everyone else who's not too interested. But if you definitely want to know, shoot me an email or let me know either way, and I can always do one of these. I can do a hangout. We can do a more multi-user session. Yeah, look. Does anyone have any questions? The tag colors, that's probably one of the most common one. Okay, so that's two for APAT. No worries. Look, I'll organise something, guys. I'll pop it on and I'll get Josh to send it around and we can do maybe a hangout where there's multiple people. Okay, 3. That's always good. Any questions, guys? The one thing I was going to cover is tag colors. Do people have questions on tag colors, which ones to use, and that sort of stuff? Or is that all pretty self-explanatory? Okay, no worries. I'll definitely organise something. I'll get Josh to send around. It's good software. It does look a bit intimidating to start with. 3-phase. Sure. Tony, were you meaning 3-phase on the Delta or just 3-phase in general? Sure. Okay. So the Delta technically doesn't do 3-phase. It's a single-phase machine. Okay, sure. What I'll do, Tony, I might, if you're going to give me a call, I can go through that in a bit more detail. The Delta itself is a single-phase machine, so it does your 240 volt. There are options for 3-phase, but 3-phase can cover a wide area of what people need to do. There's, depending on if you need 20 amp, 32 amp, if you need to do leakage, RCD, there's quite a number of different units. They're essentially separate to the Delta. So your Delta is just your main machine for your single phase gear, and then you grab your 3-phase tester for the 3-phase gear. They don't really link in. You can record through the Delta manually to do it, but it's a bit more complicated. If you want to give me a call, I can definitely go through a bit more detail with you. It can get a bit confusing. But that's the same across all the single phase machines. They only do single phase. Then you buy a separate 3-phase tester if you need it, because some people don't come across 3-phase at all. No worries. Any questions? Anything else that people want to ask? The tag colors is the one thing I was going to suggest. Do people understand which tag colors to use and how the tag colors work? Excuse the Doctor Who drink bottle too, by the way. Thanks, Tony. This is the first one of these I've done, so cool. The tag colors are pretty easy. They're really the only time tag colors really affect building construction demolition sites. Outside of that, you can use any color you like. It's very I think it causes a lot more confusion than it really should. Can APAT record 3-phase? Technically, no. but you can manually do what we call a visual only test. So you can actually program it so it does a visual only and then save it and record the results, but it won't technically connect to any three-phase equipment. Okay. Yeah, look, if anyone's got any questions, definitely give me a call. I think that's really all I was going to cover. Anyone else got any last minute questions? Um, Building site, they have to show how. Okay, so I'll cover briefly tag colors. So tag colors work. The major ones are the red, green, blue, and yellow, and they're used by the building, construction, demolition sites, usually union sites and bigger companies, and they follow the seasons. So red is December to February, you got March to May, June to August, and September to November. The colors really, from what I've seen, are used by the foreman. So you rock up onto the building site, he looks at all your gear, it needs to be tagged the colour that he's expecting, and he'll let you on. If it's not the right colour, he'll turn you away and you have to get it redone. Outside of those building sites, you can use any colour. So people quite often will do other things. Um, Thanks, Rob. You can use any colour you like. A lot of people will do black for yearly and that sort of stuff, or change it around. So you might do red one year and then you do green the next year. So you can easily see what you may have missed when you've got 20 tags against the wall. The ones that stand out, you can go, oh, I forgot to do that last time. So the people use the tags more in that respect. But apart from that, the colours only of building sites. The rule of thumb that we usually tell students and customers are that building construction is every 3 months. Warehouses, factories, sort of harsh environments are done every 6 months, and then offices and kitchens and that sort of stuff are normally done every 12 months. Industrial kitchens would normally be 6 months because they're a pretty hard environment, but we normally say offices 12 months. The only real time people use a 5 year test is in server rooms and sort of places where you don't need powering off for equipment. So if you're taking out a company's server for a couple of hours, that's not going to go down well. But most times, office equipment is normally a 12-month test, and you can use any color you like. But the thing I always say if you're testing a company, ask them what their requirements are. Find out what they want. If they don't have anything, you can suggest what you'd like to use. But if they've got their own particular requirements, they can do that. If they want to test every 2 years, that's their decision. But it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I always ask. If you don't know, ask them what they want. But that's pretty much it. Any last minute questions anyone's got before I wrap up the session? Thank you all for coming, by the way. Sure, go ahead. Go ahead. Thanks, Sean. That's okay. Look, if you think of it, give us a call. There's the email. So I'm Andrew, as you probably learned by now. I handle more of the Metrel sort of technical support, that sort of stuff. Matt is the other salesperson. He knows, I think he's joined the session now. He is really good with like weird products, stuff that you may not come across, like arc welders and those sort of things. He's got a really good understanding of that and three phase. So he can definitely answer all those sort of questions as well. But yeah, look, if you ever get stuck, just give us a call. We've usually heard it before. There's no stupid questions and that sort of stuff. Email us, phone, whatever works best. If you've ever got any training questions, admin can help you out with any of that. And he might be a bit rubbish, but it's all good. We still like him. Um, yes, dishwashers are a tricky one, particularly those drawer ones. It can be really difficult. Yeah, that's probably one of the things we get a lot is those sort of those connections. People trying to get an earth, and it can vary a lot. You can get some weird products. If you ever get stuck with that, just give us a call and we can work through it. There are items that you can't get an earth on, but it can vary a lot. But yeah, look, definitely give us a call, send us an email. If you ever get stuck, just let us know, and we can work it out over the phone. We've heard most of them. There's not much that doesn't surprise us these days. But yeah, look, if anyone's got any last minute questions, otherwise, yeah, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. And I'll organise another. I'll do a bit more of a detailed APAT session for people. I might do it on a hangout so we can all talk and get some other feedback. But yeah, look, any other questions? Thanks. No worries. Happy to help. Hope it was useful. Okay. No worries, guys. Well, thank you very much. I'll make this session. This will appear on our YouTube channel, so people can, if you want to forward it on, if you want to listen to it again, you might want to. But if there's any questions, definitely give me a call. Otherwise, I'll thanks, guys, and have a great night.